picture Wembley Stadium, back in 1966. Mexico and England are facing off on a football pitch for the very first time in World Cup history. The result? England wins it 2-0, right there on their own home turf in front of this roaring hometown crowd. Absolutely nobody sitting in that stadium that day was thinking about a flooded silver mine. England was already here once before, long before football, in a way that has nothing to do with the game and everything to do with why Mexico is any good at it. Okay, let's rewind and actually look at this history. The year is 1821. Mexico has just won its independence from Spain, but what they inherited was a total catastrophe. We're talking about the absolute richest silver veins in the Western Hemisphere, the mines of Pachuca and Real del Monte, but they were completely flooded. The War of Independence had absolutely wrecked the roads and the mine shafts, and those old mule-powered hoists, they couldn't even reach the water level, let alone drain it. So all that silver was sitting right down there, but it was completely inaccessible. The new Mexican government did something totally unprecedented for the time. They opened the country up to foreign capital. Enter the English investors. In 1824, they saw what looked like a golden, or I guess silver, opportunity. They formed the Company of the Gentlemen Adventurers, and they literally placed a massive fortune on the table, £200,000. To actually pull this off, though, they needed heavy, state-of-the-art Cornish steam engines. And to run those engines, well, they needed Cornish men. It wasn't a conquest, it was a bet, placed by people who had no idea what they were actually wagering. The physical toll of this bet was just staggering. In 1825, 60 Cornishmen left Falmouth with 1,500 tons of heavy machinery, but because the Spanish still held the main fortress of Veracruz, they had to unload all of this into literal swampland. What came next was a brutal, agonizing 14-month trek through washed-out roads and yellow fever. By the time the survivors finally reached the mountains on May 1, 1826, 130 men, 30 Cornishmen, and 100 Mexican workers had lost their lives just trying to transport the machines. It took another 3 exhausting years just to pump the water out of the mines. And when they finally reached the depths where all this silver was supposedly waiting, there just wasn't enough left to justify the cost, not even close. The mines had made no returns, but the reality was way worse than that. Over 25 years, the company bled more than $5 million and never came close to making it back. In 1849, the British sold out. A Mexican consortium bought the operation, worked the exact same veins with the exact same British machines, and made back everything the English had lost and more inside of 10 years. England came for silver and left with a debt. Not all the guys who built that losing operation packed up and went home. A lot of them stayed. They built a Methodist church. They married into local families, and they even built a cemetery up on a hill that faces the homeland they'd never see again. What was happening in the hacienda courtyards on their days off? Well, between those grueling underground shifts, these tired men did something really simple, just to pass the time. They kicked a ball around. Nobody wrote a single word about this habit. The record stayed silent on this for over 60 years, and when it finally speaks, it says something you don't expect. The very first documented match didn't even pop up until 1892. It's tucked away in a newspaper account of a picnic, but look closely at the players' names, Rule Rambling. What's absolutely crucial to notice here is that the word Mexican is completely absent from the article. For the next 15 years, this game belongs strictly 100% to the transient British colony. If an Englishman moved to a new town, the team moved with him. If he left, the game pretty much died in that town. Its survival relied entirely on English bodies. By 1908, an unexpected player steps onto the pitch for Pachuca's lineup. It was a boy who had never, not once, set foot in England. This player was a kid named Alfred Kroll, born right there in Mexico in 1889. He was the son of a Cornish tin miner, but unlike the whole generation before him, Alfred didn't learn to play football back in Cornwall. He learned the game right there in the mine patios where his dad worked, kicking the ball around alongside Mexican kids who hadn't ever heard of England either. Joined Pachuca at just 13 years old, and he went on to play for an astonishing 23 seasons. By 1915, the makeup of his team had totally transformed. Most of his teammates were now Mexican-born. Crawley ended up coaching them in Spanish, leading them to the club's very first titles won by Mexican players. The game arrived speaking English. By the time it left Kroll's hands, it had switched languages so completely that nobody could point to the exact moment it happened. Back in 1824, you got this completely failed British silverbat. But jump ahead to 1935, and you are witnessing the birth of a genuine Mexican national institution. Because in that year, Alfred Crowley, a man with Cornish blood but a Mexican birth certificate, actually led the Mexican national team to its very first international trophy. The entire mining operation had changed hands twice over by then, but the game had permanently taken root. Which brings us right back to today, this Sunday, the legendary Estadio Azteca. These two nations are meeting again, playing at altitude, in this colossal stadium that England had absolutely no hand in building, standing on the very ground where they historically lost every single bet they ever placed. You know, the last time these two squads faced off back in '66, the game still belonged, at least on paper, to the country that invented it, but it doesn't anymore. Truthfully, it hasn't for 100 years. So when that whistle blows, there is a deep, completely unseen history echoing on that pitch. Mexico plays England this Sunday, with a ball England gave away without noticing, in a language England never taught it to speak. BASTA. This is Mexico. If something here opened a door, stay and subscribe. BASTA is the second look. Mexico without the filter, without the shortcuts. New episodes every third day. See our suggested video in the box.